This has to be the dumbest f***ing retarded scene in this entire movie. Ach, was sind ihr? Oh my god, what was in that bullet? The sandbag is exploded. Oh my bad, I know. He used stopping power. Hi and welcome to History Legends. In this video we'll do a step-by-step historical breakdown of the very famous Saving Private Ryan, and more specifically the Omaha Beach landing. This video was made possible with the help of Mike Akkerman. Mike is an artist and a filmmaker, and as a World War II enthusiast, he's done tremendous research on Omaha Beach. Now the thing is, he's a bit mad at me because 100% legitimate. I told him that I would post part 2 of Saving Private Ryan shortly after part 1. It's been 4 months, and he's not the only one. A lot of you guys have been asking for part 2 for Saving Private Ryan. Anyway, so this is part 2. So if you're new to this channel, make sure to check out part 1. It's very important because there's a lot of stuff we have already covered, and I'm just gonna continue where we left off. Okay, that was very important. Move off the beach. Oh, good. See, I'm trying to be positive. You see, I'm starting with a positive note. What you have to know is that most units that tried to regroup on the beach were immediately targeted by the Germans. We're talking machine guns and mortars. Thing is, there was about 250 yards of sand to cover. Most guys were too tired to just sprint. So what they did was to run and dive. They would wait and do it again. And this is pretty realistic. The guy is hiding near the water. You see how they stand up and go back to the water? That's pretty realistic. Okay, but this is not realistic. These guys would have not lasted long. They would be so easy to spot because Omaha Beach was just so big. Any regrouping would be immediately targeted. Also notice the two behind their helmets, the Rangers. Okay, we're going back a bit. Here, notice how everybody's standing or crouched. At first glance, it looks very realistic. Now take a look at this picture from Robert Capa, who was a photographer at Omaha Beach during the beach landing. And according to his account of the battle, from the air the beach must have looked like a can of sardines. He continues by saying, the men around me laid motionless. Everyone laid flat on the beach. He even said, I unhooked my shovel and tried to dig a hole. Knowing this, we can imagine that in reality what would have happened is that the soldiers would lay flat. Some guys would try to stand up and crouch and move forward, but most of the men would try to be as small as possible for the German machine guns. And if you lay flat, the enemy might even think that you're dead. Okay. Also notice the number 2, the 2nd Rangers Battalion. So they have the helmets right, like the 2 units actually got mixed up. Oh, this shot is actually closer to what it would have actually looked like on that day. You see how the American troops are much more spread out. But it's also odd that in this shot, the beach is empty. And if you go the shot right before, they're all stuck one another. Where did they all go? All of a sudden, you see, there's a lot of guys. And then nobody. And logically, look, if you regroup, this machine gun will literally destroy you. See, that's kind of realistic here. You see how the guys were hiding behind obstacles. Robert Capa actually mentioned this a lot. But what he also said is that nobody was moving. Unlike in the movie where you see everybody starting to move left and right and there's a lot of movement. In reality, people they froze, they stayed behind an obstacle, took cover, and that was it. Think of it like a huge storm. Like it's raining, but not just raining, it's pouring. What do most people do in that case? They stay hidden where they are, where they can't find cover until the storm is over. Same thing at Omaha Beach. Now, some people in a storm will try to go through it to another location, to another hiding spot. It's rare, but it happens. At Omaha Beach, you had some guys that fired their rifles and moved left and right and they actually pushed forward, but these were the minority. Oh, okay. Okay, it's a bit gore, so I'm not gonna stop on this, but the mama scene is pretty famous or infamous. And we can say whatever we want about Saving Private Ryan, but Spielberg is one of the only movie directors that showed that part of warfare in his movie, where you have soldiers agonizing and it's just tragic. It's one of the scenes that cemented this realistic feeling and that traumatized a lot of veterans. Dying men crying for their mothers is part of Hal Baumgartner's recollections of the beach landing at Omaha Beach. Oh, again, the shot, you see a huge horde of soldiers like moving tightly together. It looks good on cam, but it wasn't like that. Of course, I wasn't there, but according to the people that were there, again, Robert Capa recorded an interaction with a guy laying right next to him. He said, "I turned my head sideways and found myself nose to nose with a lieutenant from our last night's poker game. I told him no and that I didn't think he could see much beyond my head. I'll tell you what I see," he whispered. "I see my ma on the front porch waving my insurance policy." This is one of my favorite parts from his story. First of all, you see that it's not just any soldier hiding underground, on the sand, just trying to be as small as possible. It's a lieutenant, an officer. Everybody was flat on the ground and trying to crawl their way through. And I also like this bit because unlike Saving Private Ryan where it's gore, you have a lot of blood, guys yelling, you don't have this aspect where people were also like chilling. They were joking around at their shit situation. Remember, most guys stayed there for hours. Okay, here, you see some men crawling. They should all be doing that. Oh! That's good. Here we see an engineer of the 7th Naval Beach Battalion, identified by the red stripe here on their helmet. Like he said, their only job on D-Day was to destroy obstacles, to allow tanks to go through. So including this guys in the scene, even if it's a couple seconds, is a nice touch. Oh, see, this part. Again, this is a nice touch. The fact that he drags one of the wounded soldiers is actually historically accurate. According to the survivors, task 1 was to get out of the firing line, away from the beach. And by doing so, they had no other choice but to leave all their wounded bodies behind. Now, how you have to imagine it, it's just like crabs. A lot of wounded guys would try to crawl their way across the beach towards the sandbank. And it must have been horrifying. You're wounded and you're left all alone. And let's be honest, a lot of the wounded would have simply played dead. And not just the wounded, a lot of soldiers overall on Omaha Beach would have played dead. And this is my opinion, but when the second wave arrived, I think that the guys from the second wave actually tried to pull some of the wounded to cover. So this is a representation of that moment of the battle. And I think there's even a statue in Normandy that depicts that moment of soldiers dragging the wounded to the sandbanks. It's an act of courage that was very dangerous because it slowed you down and it kind of makes you a target. Oh, for a split second here, hold on. We see a tank. Great job. Too bad it's just in the rear. Barely see it for a split second and it has no impact on the battle. But at least the movie acknowledged the existence of tanks on Omaha Beach. And beside this obscure shot in the background, so that's historically accurate. But for you to get an idea of how huge Omaha Beach was, there were 60 tanks involved in the battle. And they were not spread out. At one point, one group of 16 M4A1 of Company B just unloaded together on the beach. However, those sneaky Germans, they expected it. And 8 of the Shermans were destroyed within seconds by anti-tank guns. And from the discussion I had with Mike, he told me that the reason they didn't do too much of this tank explosion is simply because of film productions. They couldn't damage the beach. Because at the end of the day, it's still a touristic area. Horrible. This is another thing where you see the severe body, half the body. It's very gore, this movie. Oh, here. This is actually one of my favorite shots. Excellent. See one guy with his M1 Garand in the waterproof bag. But most importantly, they're all laying down on the ground. And you don't have too many guys behind each obstacle. You have one guy here, you have two guys here. Then you have the other guys laying flat, crawling. This is exactly how it was on Omaha Beach. Previously, you had places where you had 10 guys on one obstacle. That's BS. Robert Capa said there was only spot for 2 guys per hedgehog, max. And he was very happy when the other guy left to another place, meaning that max capacity is 2. And you see the mortars, very good. Oh, however, here, no. They would all have been dead. Like, realistically, all these guys would have been done, finished. It went so fast, I'll show you again. Okay, they're all laying on the ground. They're all standing up. Okay, first of all, this guy was just waiting patiently for that shot, like for that camera shot. That's pretty funny. Okay, they move forward. Boom! Mortar explosion. First of all, no crater, but this explosion from a mortar within a 20-meter radius. All these guys would have been hit. Robert Capa recalls, the next mortar shell fell and every piece of shrapnel found a man's body. And that's the thing, in movies, you have explosions, but they never cause damage. Apart from like bodies like mutilated, like legs and arms flying away. But the blast isn't what caused the most casualties. It's the fragments of the shell that did the most damage. And they were the most effective against guys like them in a standing position. So Tom Hanks, Captain Miller hit, this guy hit, everyone around hit, wounded. And like we saw in the first part, mortars caused more casualties on Omaha Beach than machine guns. But here we get the opposite feeling. Okay, now here, check this out. The pole charge, that's very good. Hold on. This guy here, the long thing that he's carrying is called a pole charge, which is different from a Bangalore. The pole charge was 8 foot long, or about 2.5 meters, about twice as long as the Bangalore. The pole charge was attached to 20 half-pound blocks of TNT via a swivel joint. The main purpose was to eliminate bunkers by shoving this thing through the embrasure, and there were usually 2 per landing craft, so it's a nice touch that they add this. Again, I think they had this sheet of things they wanted to show. They're like, okay, pole charge, tank, and so on. But mortar fragments, they're like, nah. Okay, again, explosion does nothing, just for spectacle. But that first person view, wow. First person shooter. Oh, again, the camera work in this movie is fantastic. But just the scene before. Okay, you saw in this scene, it's a bit gore, so I don't want to have this guy in the background. And I was wondering, how realistic is it to have these wounded soldiers screaming? Now, if you're a combat medic, I'd love to hear what you have to say in the comment section. Okay, you have the guys like finally finding cover. You have the massive BS bunker. And look. Oh. So this sandbank is supposed to be the part called the shingle. The famous sea wall at Dog Green sector. And you see how it's not even high. It barely protects you. Like, I mean, it's some cover, but In reality, this was a literal brick and mortar wall that slanted away from the beach. It started at the Vierville Draw and ran east along the beach all the way to the Saint Laurent Draw. Now, contrary to popular belief, this wall was not a fortification built by the Germans. It was built by the French in the 1920s to stop erosion. So the stone shingle and massive seawall were replaced by a little puny sandbank. Sand slope. You see that? No. Okay. Predictions. Okay, all bets. Is this guy going to die? We always know that the radio operator in every American movie has to die. So, is he gonna die or not? Or in how much time is he going to die? Let me know. It looks super legit. Sounds very aggressive. He says there are no DD tanks on the beach. DD stands for duplex drive. That was an ordinary Sherman tank modified with a retractable skirt that allowed it to literally float to shore. So that part is okay. However, the last thing he says, Dog 1 is not open. Dog 1 is not open. This is where things get interesting. Interesting, like Americans say. Interesting. You guys gotta teach me the American way. Okay, remember in part 1 we talked about these vital ravines that allowed movement from the beach inland. These massive gaps. The Americans had code name for each one of them. And one of them was called Dog 1. However, Dog 1 was defended by 2 massive fortifications on each side of the ravine, plus an anti-tank position. But here we don't see anything resembling Dog 1, we just see a flat cliff. The area resembles more Widerstand Nest 70. Overall, the way how Captain Miller talks about Dog 1 makes it seem as if that was the bunker in the entire German fortification in that sector, which is incorrect. What I think happened is that Dog 1 was written in the script, but the film directors or the crew didn't understand what it meant. Okay, you have some guys digging. Okay, here it's kind of realistic to have all the guys lined up. But again, one problem I have is that all these guys are able-bodied men. But if you look at the real situation, there would be hundreds of guys lined up along the shingle, and a lot of them would be wounded. You had guys with bandages on the arms, head, and they would just be waiting for the end of the battle. You wouldn't be able to move them, traumatized. And only a small bunch would be actually combat ready. Because remember, all the woundeds would have ended up crawling up to that position. Oh, of course, he's dead. Oh my god. Come on. Typical. I wouldn't even be surprised if Saving Private Ryan didn't start the trend. Like, can you guys tell me in the comment section, every movie where the radio operator dies? CAT-F. CAT-F stands for Commander of Amphibious Task Force. Okay, you see them run? Yeah, that's good. Run to cover, and there would be hundreds of guys like that. And that part, check this out. Little detail. What would have happened is that a lot of guys would have crawled all along the beach. Like we said, stand up, run flat, or some would just crawl their way through. And once you're just in front of that barricade, that seawall, whatever, then they would sprint. But they wouldn't sprint the entire way. And again, what's good is that some of the guys would have lost their weapon. So the fact that he doesn't have one and his buddy has one is very realistic. Like, the guys just tried to save their life. So yeah, they would be all lined up like that. Wait, what? What the hell are these guys doing? Oh my god, this has to be the dumbest retarded scene in this entire movie. All wrong. Like, this is so off. First of all, why would you have 4 medics on one guy? And what the hell are they trying to do? Are they trying to operate this guy, pulling out their scissors and sewing kit in the middle of a battle, in the middle of flying bullets and mortars? Oh yeah, just let's operate in the least sanitary conditions in the middle of a firefight. Fully exposed, let's go. Historically speaking, their job, these medics, would drag the wounded to safety. And they mostly took care of the guys that were already at the shingle, away from danger. I know it's harsh, but these medics would definitely not waste their time on a guy in such a critical condition. Because of the amount of casualties, they would have no other choice but to go through some triage. Because think about it, they could save 10 lightly wounded guys in the meantime. But no, Spielberg loves the gore, he wants the blood, he wants all this horror movie type of stuff. And at best, stabilizing them was all they could do. And operating and taking care of all the wounded on the beach only happened after the battle. And what is this horde of soldiers charging in the background? It's like a Call of Duty game where you have wave after wave pouring on the beach. And again, like all packed one another. And see, and then he's dead. Of course, he's dead. Is that supposed to be some kind of joke? Look at the guy. Do you think he can be saved? I got a little bit mad. Okay, I said I would not be mad, but come on. No, again, it's not Dog 1. It's a German strongpoint or Widerstand nest. Okay, that actually happened. You see, all the guys... Oh. You see, this is something that actually happened. So I'm happy they portray it. The combat-ready guys would go to all the soldiers, take their weapons and ammo. However, it did so over a span of multiple hours. Like, it did not happen instantly. Because there's a concept that in movies like you don't often see, but soldiers don't want to die. They don't want to get shot at. Okay, another thing. He only takes the ammo from the poor guy. But you have a lot of wounded men just laying there. They would have pulled them. Over the course of the battle, they would have pulled the wounded to the sandbank, the shingle, whatever you want, and they would have just waited there. Oh, Bangalores. Okay, you see how they're smaller than the pole charges. So now is a good time to talk about Tom Hanks' character, Captain Miller. Miller's actions are largely based on a couple men that fought on the western end of Omaha Beach. Mainly 24-year-old Captain Ralph Goranson, the real-life commander of Charlie Company from the 2nd Rangers. However, his actions are also based on Brigadier General Norman Koto from the 29th Infantry Division. So this entire action where you see Captain Miller yelling for Bangalore to open a path through the wire is actually what General Koto did. Essentially, Saving Private Ryan combined 2 firefights into a single one. There was the small-scale battle fought by Ralph Goranson and his Rangers at WN-73, near the Vierville Draw, aka Dog 1. And then Norman Kota's Bangalore charge breakthrough 1.7 kilometers further at WN-70. And this part is actually well portrayed in the movie The Longest Day. Now, to be honest, little pause, but General Norman Koto is one of my favorite commanders of World War II just because he's too badass. He was a tough general that would rather spend time on the battlefield with his men than behind a desk. He actually landed as part of the second wave at 7 a.m. on Dog White sector. And he saw how the landings were a debacle. And just like you see Captain Miller doing in the movie, Koto regrouped some men, small groups here and there, and ordered them off the beach. And once at the shingle, this is where he called for Bangalores. And basically you have to put them one after another, push them, and it explodes. The TNT inside. Oh. Again. What is this dumb shit? Like, the guy's operating this guy in the guy's clearly dying, and the guy with the scissors, what what is he expecting? Personally, I don't like when there's too much gore, and in this case, it's unnecessary, right? Like, and now they're putting the Bangalores together. Wait, is it? It's actually Vin Diesel. Honestly, it would be nice to have a remake. Fast and Furious, Omaha Beach. That would be epic. And then you bring the entire crew of the Expendables and just do the beach landing with one landing craft filled with the Expendables charging at the Germans. I got a concept, guys. Okay, they made the breach. Okay, this is what we see in video games, that part. Now, in the real battle, when the mixed soldiers of the 29th Infantry and the Rangers, led by General Koto, blew up the wire, they actually came under fire immediately. It wasn't that easy, like they couldn't just push through. And as you can imagine, nobody wanted to move. Like you have machine guns firing at this exact location, and the soldiers just laid flat. They were like, they were noping the F out of this. And this is what I find fascinating. You have General Koto, 51-year-old. At the time, it was Stone Age. He stood up, ran across the shingle, and this inspired more men to follow. General Koto went across the crater and stood halfway through the escarpment. And this inspired all the others, and small groups started to gather and climb up. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is the only time during World War II where you have a general fighting on the front line with his men, charging ahead of his men. And here in this part, Captain Miller plays the role of Koto that tries to plan the next move once they moved across the Bangalore explosion. And you see how easy for them it's to hide there. That's exactly why the Germans didn't build the fortifications like that. But anyway. What? What did you say? 2 MG42s, 2 mortars, add 20, left 30? First of all, pardon my French, but this is a horrible MG42 nest. Man is fully visible, and sandbags won't help you at all against naval artillery. Digging a foxhole would have been 100 times better. And because of this movie now, every video game uses sandbags as protections. How fantastic it is. Now, for the sentence that he said, I'm gonna put it, here, down there. I think he's talking to his own mortar team. Perhaps 2 mortars to target the 2 guys or the 2 MGs up the slope. Add 20 essentially means add 20 yards forward. In other words, that means that the earlier shot fell short. It landed 20 meters ahead of the target. And then he says 30 yards right. And then he says go left 30. That means that the earlier shot was also 30 meters too much to the right. That's the only explanation I could think of, even if we don't see any mortars. Okay, we gotta get this draw open. They talk about it as if it was the Vierville draw that the Rangers had to capture in real life. But in the movie, it's just a cliff. Like, the actual thing was a massive fortress. Come on, Vin Diesel. Let's go. You get them. You get them crowds. It's a very silly defensive position, but... You would think that the Germans would think about such a scenario, but... Hollywood, right? Like, the Germans only have, like, these 2 bunkers and that machine gun nest. Like, they didn't think of blind spots or something. They've been working on this Atlantic Wall for years. Yet, no, some Americans pull up and the Germans are blind. Ach, wo sind ihr? Spinnst du, da sind ja keine Amis. Okay, here too. I need you gun nuts. Okay, gun nuts, I don't know if it's a word. Gun experts, nerds, gun nerds, weapons experts. It would have been nice to give these M1 Garand some recoil when firing. Because from what I've been told, live M1 rounds really kick. So again, let me know in the comment section if you've ever fired an M1 Garand. How's the recoil? Do you think it's a good rifle? Let me know. Okay, you see, that scene is not bad actually. The guys are hiding. This was Omaha Beach for hours. And this too, this too. Okay, this is actually good. The guy is praying, being scared. Excellent. They're scared and the guy in the back is crawling towards safety. I have really hard feelings about this movie because some parts are just excellent and some parts are just like trash material. Imagine the movie had taken this seriously and you had hundreds of guys just crawling, like painfully crawling to safety. Would have been much better. Oh my god! What was in that bullet? Sandbag is exploded. Was it an explosive round? Oh my bad, I know. He used stopping power. Increases bullet damage by 40%. And that's why it exploded. Okay guys, trust the science. This is all I can say. Trust the science. Come on, shoot them. And it's funny how the sound of Omaha Beach all around just stopped. Like Omaha Beach is literally just that part. Like you don't see artillery firing and the entire millions of 500,000 men involved. Like you don't see that. You don't hear it. It's just there. Like that's the problem I have with the movie. The scale of the battle is just highly reduced. Come on, America! We're the best! Okay, that shot is already better. So originally we said General Koto pushed through. They kind of flanked the German fortifications WN70 at this place. But then the real battle happened more inland when they actually fought for the Vierville village. But I understand, like, with the budget to have another urban battle. But now the movie switched to the events closer to Ralph Gorson's experience. Essentially, the Rangers were stuck on their sector of the beach. And they had two options. Either move up the Vierville draw that's highly defended and get mowed down, or climb the cliff and use their ranger skills and then flank it. So by using ropes, Gorson and his men actually scaled the cliff, which was defended by a German position called WN73, which included a manor. And after that, Gorson and his rangers spent the entire day clearing this position. So the actual rangers did not fight their way up the hill, they climbed it. Honestly, that would have been very badass in the movie, but... And you have the Germans in the bunkers, they're staying, right? Instead of like maybe retreating to a better position, they're like, nah, let's stay, everything's fine. Oh, German tactical skills right here. Look at that. Oh yeah. Anyway, I think I'm tired of this. I had like a couple other notes, but I'm just gonna ditch it. Sorry, Mike. I don't have the energy to keep watching this. Oh yeah, before I forget, I will cover the final battle of Saving Private Ryan. But you know me, I can't promise you when, but it's in the program. Anyway, I finally finished part 2. Let me know what you thought of my analysis in the comment section below. If you're new to this channel, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you like the information I provide, make sure to check out my Patreon. The link is in the description.